Working out? Okay, good. Great. All right. Well, let's see. So uh, we are on our fifth lesson already in this quarter. And in this quarter, we're looking at the rise and fall of a nation. Does anybody know what part we're on? Rise. Hmm? Yeah, we're on the going down part right now. We're on the going down. We were doing all right for the first couple of times. We had a lesson on Solomon receiving wisdom and Solomon building the temple, and the temple, the ark, and the glory of God. That was lessons 1, 2, and 3. And then we hit lesson 4, and that was Solomon's fame was reduced to shame. If you look at the titles and all the rest of the lessons, it's not the best. So we already saw the rise part, so now we're going to see the other part a little bit more, I think, for a while. The quarterly aim is the student will learn that whether God's people receive blessings through obedience or punishment from disobedience, God's glory will prevail in the end. So God's going to do what God's going to do. If we do what we're supposed to do, great. We're going to be blessed. The Lord's going to help us. If we do something else, it doesn't turn out very well. And we're going to see this with Israel, but it happens with us too. When we follow the Lord's will, the Lord does help us and bless us. Sometimes He even does it when we don't do it right, a lot of times. But we're going to see today an example of things getting off track even more than they got off track last time. And so just to backtrack a little bit, so what happened with David? Does anybody want to summarize David's, his life? I know. You don't have to say an hour's worth of stuff, but yeah. Somebody want to just give us the high points? We can just shout out the high points of David's life. Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. That's a good summary. So you can see from the beginning of David's life all the way through, he pointed toward the Lord. He trusted in God. Uh, David and Goliath was a huge example that was in front of the whole entire country when that happened. And he trusted in the Lord, and he was angry at how Goliath and the others in his fellow warriors from Gath were mocking the Lord. And so he said, yeah, I'm not going to stand for this. And Lord helped him be victorious, and that that definitely put David on the map as far as somebody that went from almost obscurity to something where people noticed him. Even before that, he was a shepherd boy and he was anointed. Remember that? Whenever Jesse brought his sons forth and said, "Yeah, nope, none of these." And they brought in David from the field where he was minding the sheep, and David was anointed. And so he ended up becoming playing songs for King Saul, and we studied the Psalms for 2 quarters, and so a lot of those came from David. David was not just a musician, he was also a writer of songs, and his songs magnified the Lord. And so you look at David in so many instances in his life, great things accomplished, but he pointed to the Lord. And so we can do great things, have great accomplishments in what we do, but when we do those things, do we give God the credit that God gave us the talent, skills, and abilities to do it, that that his will made it so? Do we give him the credit like David did? And do we, even when somebody else says, "Man, that was amazing what you just did," do we tell people, "Lord bless me," and put the focus on the Lord? And so David did that over and over again. He did it in front of the whole entire country. And his passion was for the people and for the Lord. And he unified the country. They brought the ark back to Jerusalem. And they didn't do it right the first time. And so David was good at saying, "Time out. This is wrong. We're stopping everything. Somebody died. We did it wrong." And sometimes we have to do the same thing. Sometimes we have good intentions, but something's not working out. And it's time to say, "Yeah, okay, let's take a break and reconsider and look at things." And that's what they did. And they did it right the second time. They followed God's commandments, and they were blessed. And they put it in Jerusalem. The fact that they even got Jerusalem was a blessing. So David did a huge amount of things. He was a king that everybody pretty much admired, I would say, because he was a mighty warrior, and they conquered pretty much anybody they went against. And if you remember the quote, Saul has killed his thousands and David has killed his 10,000s. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was in worse shape, actually, right? There's only one tribe. So, yeah. So David was prosperous. The Lord wouldn't let him build the temple, and there was war pretty much through David's life, but he was victorious because he listened to the Lord, and there's lots of examples of where you can see he sought the Lord's will. One time they came from the direction of trees that were blowing in the wind because there's a lot of noise, and it covered the noise of the troops coming up on the enemy. And so David knew that the Lord made him a promise that through his lineage the Savior would come, and that his kingdom would be in place forever. And so he knew that, and his family knew that. Solomon knew that. They all knew that. And that was an unexpected blessing that David received at the time that he was asking the Lord for the ability to build the temple. And so David pretty much did everything he could do except for build it. So instead of getting upset about it and being rebellious and going some other direction, he said, "Well, I'm going to do all the things I can do. Lord doesn't want me to do that part, then I'll do as much as I can to support somebody else doing it." And so sometimes it's not for us to do something, or I don't know, I think about it, sometimes you go interview for a job And you're looking for a job. That's why you interviewed in the first place. And whether you get it or not, I always pray the same thing, that if it's the right thing, that the Lord would open the door. If it's not the right thing, that you close the door. And I'm too dumb to know the difference, so please take care of it so I don't need to worry about it. And I think the Lord has been involved in that stuff. Whatever the Lord wants us to do, that should be what we want to do. And how do we know what the Lord wants us to do? By studying, by praying. If you're saved, you have the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit can help you to see better what the Lord is trying to teach us and wants us to do. And David was obedient to the Lord, and he did everything. He put the plans together, he gathered the materials, he gathered the workers, and he didn't just gather some workers. He didn't go down the street and say, hey, are you a plumber? He didn't do that. He pretty much said, who are the best at doing this construction? And some of them were from another country, Tyre, and carpenters and whatnot, and craftsmen. So he brought them over and worked a trade with them for some food. And so all kinds of things going on. Actually, I kind of got into Solomon's part there a little bit. But then Solomon came on board. So what was different about Solomon after David? Brother Mike, I'm not going to ask you to give a summary on Solomon. We'll have somebody else do that. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, no man king anybody, right? And so Solomon asked for wisdom, and at the time that the Lord asked him the question, he was absolutely sincere in his answer that he wanted to do a good job for the people. He was only how old when he became king? 20 years old. Can you imagine being the king of a nation at 20 years old and expected to sort things out and figure out what's happening, and you're on the backside of all these wars and things and intrigue. There was different intrigue on different things we studied, trying to sort all that out and be able to rule a country the way that God wanted you to rule it. Huge responsibility on his shoulders, and it sure seemed like he felt it almost immediately. What was the first test that we see in the Bible that came his direction? Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and it said the people marveled at Solomon's wisdom in that situation. And so he presided over the people. That was one situation. You can imagine he had thousands, more than thousands, over his lifetime, situations like that to deal with. And so he started building up the temple. The materials he had, the laborers, it was fixed ahead of time. He started getting the lumber coming on barges. So one direction was wood. It sounded like the other direction was grain. And so it was a barter agreement. And for the people that are working the wood, when they're working wood, they're not working the crops, right? You got to have food to eat. They didn't have a grocery store like us. And so if they wanted to eat, they had to have a source of food. Solomon knew that, and so that was a good trade for them. So they worked through all that, and Solomon was blessed more than material things, more than anyone we can see was blessed. And he was doing things at the end, building golden shields and put them in front of his residence. It's like, was the Lord leading him to do that? Didn't seem like it. It just seemed like the thing he was doing. So Solomon, I think, had good intentions. He did finish the temple in a decent amount of time, and then he built his own house, which was more opulent than the temple was. So it kind of leads you to believe maybe. Right, and didn't say God was necessarily leading him on that part of it, just kind of said he did what he was doing. And so he was a master at business. The Lord blessed him in that. And you can imagine that over that time, there were conscripts from Israel that were working on the temple itself. Did he move those people from working on that to working on his house? Maybe. Sounds like they might have done that. And so you can tell toward the end, wasn't necessarily seemed like Solomon was doing it the right way. And of course, with his wives and his concubines, that was certainly against what the Lord had taught him, and even his own father had taught him. And so they started moving towards idolatry, and the agreement with God that he had made with Solomon, as long as you follow my commandments, you'll be blessed. But you stop following my commandments, then you're not going to be blessed. And so we kind of saw that in some of the last that we saw with Solomon. So Solomon received wisdom. That was back in lesson 1. And then in lesson 2, he built the temple, and that was successful. Seemed to be doing things right. The temple, the ark, the glory of God. We studied that the ark was placed in the temple, and it was all set up, and the glory of God entered into the temple and basically drove the priests out of it. And it was God showing his being pleased with what they had done. They had taken the Feast of the Tabernacles, where everybody goes to Jerusalem, and extended it to dedicate the temple. And everybody stayed, and everybody was happy. You saw that it was written right there. Everybody was happy. That was probably the best day, right, for Israel. And it only seemed like it went downhill after this happened. The cloud filled the house of the Lord, and so the Lord showed his approval for everything they had done, and they were sacrificing burnt offerings, thousands and thousands of those, and the Shekinah glory of God that was back from Moses' day filled the tabernacle and filled the Holy of Holies in the temple. And then we got into last week. Last week kind of told us that things were getting a little bit off track. The king of Sheba visited, and she was amazed at what she saw. She realized that his wisdom was far beyond even what she had heard before. And she brought offerings of the finest foods, finest clothes, and other things she had brought with her. And she ended up saying, and blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighteth in thee to set thee on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore he made thee king to do judgment and justice. Okay. If you look at Deuteronomy chapter 17, we had studied there before. Solomon disobeyed God's instructions for Israel's king. He had collected many horses, which was forbidden in verse 16. He had many wives, amassed an enormous amount of silver and gold, and God instructed the king to have a copy of the Word of God at his throne to read, but there's no mention of it in the scriptures that he actually had it there. So what's the rationale for not having many horses? Mhm. Yep. It's a lot harder to rely on God every day as far as trusting in Him and saying, okay, not gonna try to take control and do what I can do. I'm gonna let God take control. And for the challenges that I face today, I ask for the Lord's help, and I don't have to figure it all out by myself. I don't have to. In fact, if I try to do it by myself, just screw it up anyway. My experience, and you see examples of that in the Old Testament. When they were going into the Promised Land, they didn't pray to the Lord before they went into battle, and they lost. And they finally sought the Lord, and they found out, oh yeah, there were problems. And so the Lord expects us to seek His help every single day. And so you can see all these people in the example, David, Solomon, they did a great job one day, but then the next day they didn't. They didn't seek the Lord. They had temptation, and instead of going this way to the Lord, they went that way toward the temptation. And all it takes is one step, and then the next thing you know, got 1,000 wives and concubines, right? Once you start sinning, it doesn't take long for that to just turn into something really big. And so we should seek the Lord's help every day. We should seek the Lord's help in fighting against temptation. Ask the Lord what the Lord wants us to do today. If there's opportunities for us to witness to somebody, then we should ask the Lord to help us see those opportunities when they do come. I've done that before where I'm so dumb, afterwards I'll realize that's a perfect opportunity to witness and I didn't do it. And it wasn't the Lord didn't give me the opportunity. I was too dumb to realize it at the time. And so when we ask for the Lord's help, we kind of have to be on the ball too, right? You can't just wander around, not really have any focus about yourself. If you're going to try to do the Lord's will, you need to be thinking about doing the Lord's will and where the opportunities are. I'm talking to myself more than anybody, so sure hope you guys know that. Okay. So Solomon got mixed up with 1,000 wives and concubines. And in Deuteronomy 7, 3 and 4, the Lord had warned Israel many times about intermarrying with foreign nations. To Solomon, this seemed like a good idea because he was looking for alliances with foreign nations, is the rationale behind it. Because do you think some king's going to come after you if you're married to his daughter and she's part of the royalty or part of that kingdom, and you have treaties in place and all those sorts of things? And so it's true they had peace, but it wasn't peace that God had put in place. It was peace by the logic that man puts together. Let's see. So when we look at 1 Kings 11 and 10, Solomon had failed God. And then the next thing we see is that his son Rehoboam is coming on the scene. And so we're going to study about that today. So when I saw Rehoboam and Jeroboam, I was focusing on the Boam, and I lost track when I first started studying. It's like, which one of these two is it? So I started thinking of Jeroboam as Jerry, because Jerry's easy to remember. And so I said, okay, Jerry and the other guy, is because Rehoboam doesn't do anything for me as far as an easy name to remember. So that's kind of how I remembered it. Because when most of the word is the same, it was a little bit confusing to me. So let's do some reading. 1 Kings chapter 12. And if somebody would like to read up to verse 15. Thank you, Sister Joanne. So here we're studying about Rehoboam. That is Solomon's son. So how many sons did Solomon have? Do we know? Do we know their names? We don't. We don't know their names. They're not written here for us. And so usually when something's not written here, it means we don't need to know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think he had 1 or 5 or 10 or? Yeah, I mean, it could be thousands, right? And so even though there were that many, there's one mentioned. And so and the one that's mentioned didn't do things right, but Mhm. Yeah, right. Yep, because Solomon had already done it wrong and he has already put his plan in place. Didn't matter what they would do. from this point on, really. Lord was gonna follow through on it. Yeah, right. So so Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all of Israel were come to Shechem to make him king, and Jeroboam uh, was the son of Nebat. I don't recall who that was, but he went to Egypt, and there's some idea that he went to Egypt to get away from Solomon because Solomon knew that Jeroboam had been told that he was going to inherit uh, the kingdom, and Solomon was probably going to try to kill him. And so that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, it is. And there are some genetic tendencies. It doesn't mean, yeah, you're guaranteed you're going to do those things. It just means you're more susceptible to certain temptations than other ones for whatever reason. Uh, yeah, exactly. Well, it's all sin, right? It all boils down to that. Yeah, thanks, Brother Mike. And so Jeroboam wasn't new to the scene. He was there, and they sent and called him, and he came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father, who was Solomon, made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. So what happened? So when we saw the very end of the timing of the temple being finished, they had a feast, and it seemed like the whole country was happy, right? It was hard work putting that temple together. They had conscripted people, they had a lot of work, but everybody was happy because they were doing what the Lord wanted them to do. And then from that time until this time, now it says, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou thy grievous service, and so on. So the peace that was inside of Israel and outside of Israel, yeah, he was on a track. Yeah, so he liked to build, he liked to do all the things he was doing. He said, we're just going to keep on going. We just built the temple. We're going to build something for me next, and we're just going to keep going on after that. It didn't say anything about him seeking the Lord's will and during that time. And uh, the peace that they had inside and outside the country while they were building the temple, the Lord put that in place because they were following his will. And so when we do what the Lord wants us to do, the Lord takes care of things. I've seen different situations, hindsight. Yeah, Lord was taking care of us. We didn't even realize it at the time, but he was. We did what he wanted us to do. And some other things we were worried about, we said, yeah, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to have to do what the Lord wants us to do, and we'll figure that stuff out later or whatever it is. And the Lord helped us. There were things that happened. I was like, don't know where that came from. We prayed about it. The Lord gave us blessings. And so when we follow the Lord's will, I come back to it so often in my studies, is the parable of the sower. You reap what you sow. If you sow worship and following the Lord and giving him the credit and pointing other people to the Lord, then what you're going to reap are blessings. If you follow what the devil wants you to do, you follow temptation, we see over and over again. We see more examples of that in the Bible than we see anything. The people following the wrong path thinking, oh, that doesn't apply to me, or whatever they want to think. I'm better than that, or whatever they want to say, but the focus is on themselves and not on God. And pretty soon they're on the wrong track, and they're harvesting the results of doing it wrong. And so here, Israel, not just Solomon and not just Rehoboam, the whole country is realizing the results of it not being done right. So Solomon was the leader. He was expected to do it right. At least up to some point he did, and afterwards he didn't. Most especially when they started transitioning into idolatry after he married all these foreign women. It was a natural thing for it to happen. He was wise enough to know that would happen. It wasn't like he didn't figure that out, right? So just like us, we can know the right thing. Yeah, that's the right thing I should do, but I didn't do that. Well, whose fault is that? That's our fault. It's on us. When we know what we're supposed to do and we don't do it, it's on us. And thankfully, the Lord has a path for us to be forgiven and wake up the next day and try to do a better job following the Lord the next day and trusting in him to help us. So we watch this. Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou thy grievous service thy father and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. So we went from harmony inside the country on the day they dedicated to the temple to everybody being tired of supporting the king, paying the taxes, doing the conscripted work for his house or whatever it was. And so this statement, we shouldn't take it that it's from one person. This is from the country saying this. He's a representative of the country. And so here's Rehoboam replying to Jeroboam, saying, and he said unto them, go away for 3 days, and I'll think about it. That's probably not a good indication. The whole country's gathered together, and he says, give me 3 days to think about it.
Dissatisfied with the way the government was being operated. It was just, hey, make it a little lighter.
Mm-hmm.
We've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. Let's lighten the load.
Yeah. Yeah, let's take a break.
And the
Right. Right. And they knew that it was throughout the country. I mean, they had talked to people, they knew how it was, but you can imagine that the younger men were saying, hey, this is our turn. You know, this is our turn to get fat off of all this and to get the benefits of all this. And I think that's what the phrase, my little fingers shall be thicker than my father's loins. When does that happen? When you're fat, right? When you put on a lot of weight, your fingers get thicker and bigger. I had to get a bigger size ring because my finger got bigger. And so it wasn't because I got more muscle in my finger. I wish it was. It wasn't. But that's what he's talking about is, yeah, you know, we're the younger ones and we're coming up and this is our day to benefit from all this. And everything that's happened is amazing. Now we want our share, and yeah, no, we're not gonna stop anything that's been happening. In fact, we're gonna try to get more out of it. Hmm. Right. Hmm. Yeah, good points. Good points. So let's take a look at verse 16. If somebody would like to read verse 16 through 24 of 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 16 through 24.
So when all Israel saw the king, people answered the king, saying, This to your tents, O Israel. Now see to this, and now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, then King Rehoboam sent Adoniram, who was over the tribe, and all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. And it came to pass when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, they sent and called him unto the congregation and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David but the tribe of Judah only. When Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 184,000 chosen men, which were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, Solomon. But the word of God came unto Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak unto Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, ye shall not go up and fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearken not therefore to the word of the Lord, and return. They hearken therefore to the word of the Lord, and return to depart according to the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Brother Jim. So what happened here?
Well, the young men had Rehoboam wrong. They were like young men. And
Hmm.
they said, Shh, you're king. Tell them what you're going to do.
Hmm.
And as a result, Israel rebelled. They said, we're not going to follow. And once they had left, Rehoboam, they made Jeroboam the king.
Hmm. Hmm.
Otherwise, he had in his mind, he was looking for an advisor that would confirm to him what he already thought. Midianites. But the same way, when I look for advice, when I go to someone who I already know and they agree with me on it, and I'm looking for confirmation to satisfy my conscience, where am I actually looking for the best plan?
Hmm.
And that's where the problem came from.
And what you didn't see here, he didn't seek God, right? And so that was, as king, that was his first mistake of not seeking God. He sought the wisdom of the older people. They gave it to him. Okay, that's good opinion, I guess. And I'm going to talk to some other people. Said, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so we're going to follow that advice because that's what I want to do. And they told me they knew what he wanted anyway. These were his buddies, right? They knew this wasn't the first minute he thought about this. He'd been thinking about this a long time, years and years. And so it's like, hey, this is our chance. This is our opportunity. What are we going to do? Yep, it's time. Let's go. Let's do it. And so the whole situation backfired to the extent that he was ready to go to war. So this was the first time that Israel was in a war since Solomon took over that we see recorded, and it was going to be a civil war. And so God stopped it. And so you can see in verse 24, God gave them the commandment to stand down. And it's not going to get any better. You keep reading, which I did, it doesn't get any better. So stand by for more fun times of people doing it wrong and expecting good things to happen. That's pretty much what we got a lot of coming up. And it's just a good lesson to us. I think in the Bible it shows us all this because we're the same way. It's easy for us to do something that we know isn't right or not exactly right, thinking, oh yeah, good results are going to happen, and then good results don't happen. Well, yeah, we should have known that. We did already. We did it anyway. Or we didn't know, but we didn't seek the Lord's help. We didn't ask the Lord to give us wise counsel. We didn't do that. And so, yeah, okay, we didn't do the right thing. Things blew up. You ever take a step back at things that have happened like that? Blessings too, right? Wow, look at all these great blessings. We didn't deserve these blessings. Why do you think that happened? We've been focusing on what the Lord wants us to do and forgetting about a lot of things, and He's taking care of things, and we don't need to worry about those things when we do what He wants us to do. So all of these things should be thought-provoking. We shouldn't think of these people and say, these are just rotten people. They're just normal people. They're sinners. They're all sinners. And we're just looking at either you follow the Lord and it's good, or you don't and it's not good. And we'll study more next time. Thank you.